This is the Impulsive Thinker Podcast, a show for high-achieving ADHD entrepreneurs. Together, we will inform and educate you about how to improve your self-awareness while developing systems, routines, and habits for conquering the entrepreneurial world. Here is your host, Andre Brisson.
Hey there, it's Andre the Impulsive Thinker. This week we talked to Dr. Kenny Handelman about bipolar disorder and ADHD. And the one thing I didn't realize that bipolar, it makes sense now that I talked to him, but I didn't really realize that bipolar had a lot to do with mood and emotions. So emotions/moods and emotional regulation. Well, not necessarily emotional regulation. I'm bringing up emotional regulation because he mentions something later on that emotional regulation disorders are somewhat different than bipolar and can get amplified with the ADHD, the emotional regulation. So bipolar is a lot about mood. The mood episodes as he talks, the manic and the depressive and the one in between. And then the hypomanic was that was insightful for me because it's a subtle differences. But again, like he says, the emotions are observable by others, not just by the person. But what I want to talk to you about today was to go a little more about emotions, and emotional regulation is a huge thing with ADHD. And you know what? And we need to be cognizant of our emotional regulation because remember, ADHD brains, we feel big, rapid, intense, and raw emotions. I don't know if that's in any story and in any studies, but I'm starting to add the term raw because I feel these are raw emotions are coming out unfiltered, intensely and quick and massive. And we need to understand this and to gain control so we can have emotional regulation versus emotional dysregulation, because we all know the outcomes of emotional dysregulation. Tantrums, outbursts, things that should never be said. And it's an impulsive, quick reaction. Our brain has not had time to catch up to these emotions because our prefrontal cortex is kind of lagging. And it comes out and quick, all right? I tell my team here, actually, just ignore the first facial expression I do every time it talks to me because that's not going to necessarily be the proper reaction because I need to make that face and then my brain catches up and then I can actually start thinking rationally because that first intense emotional reaction just seems, I'm working on it, but I can't play poker. Let's put it that way. The other thing, as I also stated from a conference that passed, they're saying the manic depressive moods for bipolar are just like depression. They just choose you. You don't decide or nothing. It's not triggerable. ADHD emotion dysregulation is trigger. Our emotional reactions are all triggered with ADHD. And from I understood that in talking to some other people is that, and my own personal reflection is when I get a big emotional reaction, usually in the negative and stuff that's really hurtful or frustrating or pissing me off, looking back, they were all triggered. It's just to decide I'm going to be pissed off for whatever reason. There was a trigger. Either it's me triggering myself or a situation triggering me or a person, okay? So a lot of times it's not you failing having that emotional reaction because it was triggered. Now, the way you react and how you execute the reaction, we have responsibility for that. But we can't hold ourselves and negatively hold ourselves responsible because in a way, our brain just didn't help us in that case. Not saying that just go at it and react however you want. But the point what I'm trying to make is emotions with ADHD are triggered. They are triggered. And for you, the reaction is not you. It's not a you thing. It's a trigger thing. It's a brain thing. Okay? So we just want, because we just don't decide to fly off the handle, right? We don't make a conscious decision. I'm just going to decide, I'm just going to go off. Something occurred. Something triggered you. A lot of times, that's what I'm finding out lately has a lot to do with some of my childhood stuff. This little mini Andre, mini me inside me jumping out to protect me. And those triggers is hard to control when you're not aware of this stuff. So self-awareness is big in all this. And this is what I want to talk to you about is every time one of these emotional outbursts occur, once you've settled down, think back and identify the trigger. Go back. It could be as far back as something that happened in the morning, but it's actually something in the evening. What triggered you? What jumped on? But also, by identifying the triggers later on, you can actually minimize the effects of these impulsive reactions by knowing the early warning signs. And that's what I did. And that's what I talk about a lot, but the mirror check. Identify these triggers so they're early warnings. And also be aware of what your body's doing, reacting. Like I know when I start getting really frustrated, I get something in my chest first, and then my shoulders go up, or sometimes it's something in my stomach, or I got something in my neck, for all different reactions or emotions. Take those as early warning cues and either separate from your situation or say, hey guys, let's stop. So the other flip side too that is not discussed very often, even all the stuff I've been reading about ADHD, which is pissing me off, is there kids, your brain's the problem, so you got to apologize and blah, blah, blah all the time. But in a way, it's not always us. And to keep that in mind, it's not always us. We're never at fault, but it's not always us. Because remember, trigger. Something triggered the emotion. Situation, out of control. But what if it's other people that are triggering you? Either they do it intentionally or unintentionally. Some will do it intentionally. Those are gaslighters and manipulators. But sometimes even loved ones are unintentionally doing it. And they need to know and understand what triggered you. So if they love you and care for you, they will try to avoid it next time. Or at least if they get into the triggering situation, you can call timeout and everyone will get it, that it's a triggering issue and we should just all stop and not keep going. And that's the difficult thing with ADHD. It's our reactions and overreactions. And then that's what we're judged on. But the person or the situation or the event of the trigger is never judged or never saying, hey, you know what? That situation really set this person off. No. The way that person set off over something we determine as very menial, it's ridiculous. They're overreacting. It's kind of like, I'm going to use the analogy in hockey, right? Or even the grade school, in the playground. Who gets in trouble all the time? The one who reacts and actually throws the first punch. The ones reacting, defending themselves because the instigator is pushing, and getting them to explode. Just like in hockey, the retaliator used to get the penalties all the time, and the instigator got off scot-free. But it's the instigator, that's the trigger. They're the ones that should be held accountable, and they're the ones that should be penalized. But the world today just allows that to happen, and we look back at the reaction and judge the reaction, and then the instigator gets off free, right? We're thought to not, and the other thing too is I remember fighting this as a young kid to this day with teachers. You know, when we're young, we're taught not to react or retaliate, just to take it. The bully, the instigator will walk away, okay? But while you're doing that, the instigator or bully was never held accountable because we never reacted. To me, that's a contradictory bullshit. And it's still going on today. And emotions, outbursts are still negatively looked at as the retaliator and never judge the instigator. And the instigator in our part for the HD brain is a trigger. So let's identify our triggers and communicate to those around us that these are triggers, and we need to communicate that to people so they can understand. And if they love you and care for you, they will try to reduce the triggering events for you and help protect you. Because it's a brain thing. Emotional regulation, we need to have a control with. It's just not something we can say, hey, as I'm getting pissed off, I'm going to stop. If we get to that point where we're pissed off, it's not going to stop. We know that. So we got to look further back. What are the early warning signs for the triggers and move forward? So emotional regulation is always going to be a challenge for ADHD brains, but we just need to be a lot more aware of our triggers and communicate those triggers to everyone else. So let me know what you think about this, and thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Impulsive Thinker podcast. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, rate, and review the show. It helps us get discovered by listeners like you. If you can share it with at least 2 people, that will start the process. Please follow us on social media. Just search for Tactical BTS. We regularly share interesting conversations and breakthroughs about entrepreneurship and ADHD. That's Tactical BTS. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Impulsive Thinker podcast. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion for the show, please visit theimpulsivethinker.com. The Impulsive Thinker podcast is produced by Tactical Breakthroughs and hosted by Andre Brisson. Remember, ADHD is only a part of you, not all of you.